So in this video, I've decided that I want to get a little political in this video. But it's going to be different than what you think. It's not political in the sense of endorsing a particular political viewpoint or party. But what I want to do is just kind of look at some of the political situation through God's Word. The key thing, I think, in all of this, whatever's going on politically, is this, is that God is sovereign and these politicians are not. God is sovereign, they are not. And the sovereign is kind of a big word and we don't use it a whole lot in our normal vocabulary, but let me give you some definitions of it. Sovereign can be used as a noun. A sovereign is a supreme ruler, especially like a monarch or a king. And it can also be used as an adjective, possessing supreme or ultimate power. And so God is that supreme ruler. These politicians are not. These political activists are not supreme. They don't have ultimate power and ultimate authority. Only God has that. And so I want to look at some passages here that just kind of shows how that to be true. And the first thing is that God puts these people in power. They are not supreme. They are not in charge because God is the one that puts them in power. In John chapter 19, Jesus says this. This is when he is brought to Pilate. And Pilate says him in verse 10, 19:10 says, "Why don't you talk to me?" Pilate demanded. "Don't you realize that I have the power to release you or crucify you?" And Jesus says in verse 11, "You would have no power over me at all unless it were given to you from above. So the one who handed me over to you has the greater sin." And so you see in that verse is that Jesus says, you have no power over me unless I give it to you. And so that power is given. Romans 13 is a pretty good passage on government. And it says this in Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 5. "Everyone must submit to the governing authorities, for all authority comes from God. And those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. So anyone who rebels against authority," catch this, "is rebelling against what God has instituted, and they will be punished. For the authorities do not strike fear into people who are doing right, but in those who are doing wrong. Would you like to live without fear of the authorities? Do what is right, and they will honor you. The authorities are God's servants, sent for your good. But if you are doing wrong, of course you should be afraid, for they have the power to punish you. They are God's servants, sent for the very purpose of punishing those who do what is wrong. So you must submit to them, not only to avoid punishment, but also to keep a clear conscience." And so you see that God is the one who puts these people in positions of authority, and they are his servants. Whether they realize it or not, they are his servants. And it says here that they are God's servants, sent for the very purpose of punishing those who do what is wrong. So God, in his grace and his favor to the world, has given us these governing authorities to restrain evil. Now, if we think things are bad with the authorities we have, if we had no authorities, how much worse would it be? So even though we may not like our elected officials, it is better than not having any at all. And so God uses this to restrain evil. They are God's servants. He has put them there, and he can remove them at any time. So it's not up to them, it's up to God. So again, that's where God is sovereign. Is that they are put there by God. They are his servants. They do what he wants. All right? So he put them there. And then the last thing that I want to point out, how God is sovereign and not these politicians, is that he directs their hearts. And it says in Proverbs 21:1, it says, "The king's heart is like a stream of water directed by the Lord. He guides it wherever he pleases." So these people, even though they may not believe in God, they may want to rebel against him, they are still subject to his sovereignty, and he directs them wherever he pleases. It's like in the Old Testament with Pharaoh. It said that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. God was the one that hardened his heart so that God could gain a victory. And so that is where we're at with politics here. Even though that these people want to run around and try and do things that we don't agree with, we don't have to worry because those people are not sovereign. God is. He put those people in positions of authority. He can take them out of authority, and he guides their heart while they're in authority. So ultimately, it is up to God.